Tensions are high in Michigan with Abdul al-Sayed's win in the state's contentious Democratic Senate primary, kicking the party's ideological battle, a real showdown between progressives and the establishment, into another gear. Dana Nessel joins me now. She is the Attorney General of the state of Michigan. It's nice to see you, Madam Attorney General. I thank you for being with us right now. I want to get a sense. You endorsed Haley Stevens, of course, who is Abdul al-Sayed's primary opponent in that race that just wrapped up here. So do you now publicly support Abdul al-Sayed as the Democratic nominee and your candidate for that seat?
Well, I'll tell you, immediately after Haley Stevens conceded that race, which Abdul won by approximately a point, I texted Abdul and I said I congratulated him on his victory. I said I'd like to meet and try to find a path forward and to have a really good discussion with him. But, you know, I should tell you that when I won in 2018, there were a lot of hurt feelings on the part of those who had endorsed my opponent. And it took some time, you know, to have those conversations and to be able to talk to stakeholders and communities that had supported my opponent to let them know why they could now fully support me. And I think that's the work that Abdul is doing right now. We're going to be meeting soon, and I look forward to talking to him.
So do you have any expectations you're going to be campaigning with him? Is that a conversation y'all have had yet?
We have not had that conversation yet. But, you know, there are several things that I do want to talk to him about. Firstly, let's make it clear that under no sets of circumstances do I want to see Mike Rogers take that Senate seat. It is essential that we have a Democratic majority in the United States Senate. And if Mike Rogers is elected, we're going to see him just as a rubber stamp for some of the worst corruption in American history in the Oval Office. He could be responsible for confirming 2 or even 3 United States Supreme Court justices. And, you know, Abdul's for Medicare for all. We don't even know if Mike Rogers is for Medicare for Medicare, you know, if he approves of the slashing of Medicare entitlements to people. So it's essential that we keep that seat. But yeah, do I have some things I'd like to talk to Abdul about? Certainly. You know, I want to talk about some of the language that he uses on the campaign trail. And I also want to speak to him about some of the surrogates that he uses that, you know, are concerning to some people.
So let me drill down on this if I can for a bit. And part of the reason we wanted to have this conversation with you is because you recently made the decision to skip the Michigan Democratic nominating convention. It'll happen this month. You said so due to safety concerns and anti-Semitic harassment. What specifically have you experienced, and what concern did you have about attending the Democratic Party nomination contest?
Well, look, myself and other Jewish electeds are subjected to a barrage of anti-Semitic threats. And that's been happening literally since my first day in office in 2019, long before October 7th. But in addition to that, you know, what we've seen in the Democratic Party as of late in here in Michigan is that we're not seeing the same kind of civil discourse that we used to be able to have, and the ability to have a diversity of ideas and opinions that are, you know, respected.
Is your party doing enough to address those concerns, Madam Attorney General?
Yeah, I would say absolutely they're not. And I would just point to the example that we have 5 members of the Democratic Party who have been charged with anti-Semitic acts of violence, of vandalism and harassment and threats to other Democratic officials, some of whom are Jewish, and including an attack on the Jewish Federation of Detroit. So those people are still permitted to come to the convention. And it's just baffling to me that while these charges are pending, they're going to be allowed to be there despite, you know, these credible charges against them. So I think that there's a lot that we could do. We could enforce a code of conduct that says that, again, you can't chase people around the convention yelling at them. You know, it's not appropriate to boo people off the stage, even if it's a candidate whose ideas you don't support. You know, we should all have the opportunity to be heard, you know, if we are members of the party.
So very quickly, to be clear, what responsibility does Abdul al-Sayed and the other members of the party that listens to him have to combat the anti-Semitism or that language and to make sure that people like you do feel safe at the convention?
Well, first of all, I'd like for him to tone down his rhetoric a little bit. And what I mean by that is that, AIPAC, which many of us do not support or agree with, and Israel, with many of us who do not support or agree with their government or the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu, right. They cannot be the central villain in literally every story, right? So if we're talking about, reforming healthcare, which all of us want to do in the party, it's not AIPAC that is responsible for those problems. It's the health insurance and pharmaceutical companies. If we want to combat climate change, that's not AIPAC in Israel that's responsible. That's big oil and fossil fuel industry. If it's the housing crisis, let's look at private equity firms and real estate trade organizations. Not everything is about AIPAC. Not everything is about Israel. And I think it's a misrepresentation to say that even if we wiped Israel off the face of the earth tomorrow, everyday Michiganders' lives wouldn't be better on all of those fronts. So, I think it's important to not only talk about Israel and only talk about AIPAC in response to every question.
Dana Nessel is the Michigan Attorney General. Madam Attorney General, I appreciate your making time to talk to us here on State of Play.
Thanks for having me.